By now, you've probably heard the chilling tales of divers who venture into unknown caves, right? Mostly, what begins as an exciting dive into deep, mysterious waters filled with the hope of discovery soon transforms into a terrifying descent into darkness. However, today we dive deeper into some of the most dangerous ones known for humankind. Imagine this. You're trapped in a pitch-black, freezing cave, completely unsure of your location. The air feels thick, and your only companion is the cold, lifeless body of a friend. What would you do? This is Fatal Tragedies, with 2 hours of the most disturbing cave diving deaths of all time. In 1974, two friends embarked on a journey into the cave, but little did they know only one of them could return. Despite being skilled divers, they pushed their limits a bit too far. I'm talking about the story of Roger Solari and his friend, Martin Farr. The cave system, Ogof Agan Ashweth, stands as the longest cave system on the Langatok Escarpment, boasting an extensive network of passages stretching over 20.2 miles. Notable for its vast expanse, Agan Ashweth unfortunately contains few formations. However, its significance extends beyond its geological features. The cave serves as a crucial habitat for a considerable population of bats. Recognizing the ecological importance of these creatures, they are strictly protected from disturbance under various legislations, including the Wildlife and Countryside Act of 1981, the Habitat Regulations Act of 1994, and the EC Habitats Directive. Deliberately or recklessly disturbing bats is a criminal offense. Cavers are urged to exercise caution and take measures to avoid causing any disturbance to this vital bat habitat. Initially, this cave was accessed through the Agan Ashweth entrance. However, access has since been gated through the Ogof Gam entrance, offering an alternative route that bypasses an awkward rift section. The original path through this section is now obstructed by a pillar. To enter the cave, individuals with valid permits can obtain keys, and they're required to sign a book indicating the chosen route. Certain regulations govern activities within the cave. Notably, the use of carbide is prohibited. Additionally, specific permits are necessary for camping inside the cave, engaging in blasting activities, or conducting research. These measures are in place to ensure responsible exploration and conservation of the cave system. In 2005, some divers decided to explore Agan Ashweth in order to figure out the tricky connection leading to Darren Sealab. They began digging into the inlet and uncovered a beautiful 984-foot passageway in the cave system. This passage eventually leads to the stunning corkscrew chamber. The cave's pathways extend for more than 20.2 miles. As you enter, you'll go through a short series at the entrance, then encounter the first boulder choke. There are also other round passages to check out inside the cave. Initially, you'll need to crawl through the long entrance passageways, but eventually, you'll reach larger ones that you can explore without any special diving equipment. One interesting journey within Agan Ashweth is the Grand Circle, located in the mainstream passageway. This route boasts 4 boulder chokes, passages blocked by rocks. Another round passage, the Southern Stream Passage, is long, damp, and quite tiring. Delve into the cave's outer and inner circle, including the fascinating Turkey Stream Way, featuring an amazing stream with pools. However, be prepared to spend about 6 hours on each round passage, and caution is essential, especially during the rainy season. Why, you ask? Well, that's obvious. These areas are prone to flooding. The waterway at the third boulder choke is often filled, and during extreme floods, passage to the second boulder choke becomes impossible. The confined section of Turkey Stream, way beyond Northwest Junction, is also off limits during heavy floods. It's also worth mentioning that Brian Price and his partners were the first to investigate the cave in 1949. The following year, David Seagrove and Harold Hicken explored the passageways, advancing until they reached the first boulder choke. In 1957, the Hereford Caving Club pushed the exploration boundaries by breaking through the first boulder choke, which had previously hindered access to the main part of the cave. Then, in 1971 and 1972, John Parker, Jeff Phillips and a few others took on the adventure of exploring the Egin-Ashweth cave system. The duo, John and Jeff, made a significant discovery in 1972, uncovering a new passageway that extended for an impressive 1,969 feet. Roger Solari takes over. In the saga of Egin-Ashweth's exploration, after adding an impressive 1,476 feet downstream to the known passageways, John's enthusiasm waned. Enter Martin Farr, inspired by the legacy of diving adventures left by Parker. Taking up the torch, Martin commenced his exploration in 1973. The following year, in 1974, he teamed up with Roger Solari for what would become the longest cave exploration at that time. However, this ambitious journey took a tragic turn when Roger faced an unfortunate incident. So, what exactly happened? Roger Solari, a true maestro of cave exploration in Great Britain, had an impressive resume of dives across Yorkshire, South Wales, and Ireland. A dedicated and resilient man in the realm of cave diving, Roger, despite his introverted nature, earned popularity and respect wherever he ventured. Nothing seemed insurmountable to him. He was a relentless pursuer of success. His journey into the underwater world began at the tender age of 12 in his homeland, the Forest of Dean. Through continuous exploration, he became intimately acquainted with the forest secrets and geology. Roger's academic pursuits focused on the Forest Master's system, aiming to document various caves and mines within the forest realm. The prevailing notion was that these caves were linked underground, and the goal was to navigate through passages to discover the elusive connection to caves on the other side of the country or even the world. His life was a tale of pushing through challenges, transforming a forest into his canvas of exploration and discovery. Roger Solari's journey continued beyond his cave explorations. Graduating with honors in physics from Birmingham University, he not only excelled academically, but also assumed leadership roles. At his school, he held the prestigious position of president of the Speleological Society, showcasing his passion for exploration. The initial meeting between Martin Farr and Roger occurred during Roger's freshman year at university. Their friendship was built on mutual trust and reliability. Roger, recognized for his unwavering commitment, often waited patiently for hours as fellow adventurers gathered caving equipment. He was typically the first to venture into the cave. Roger went on to establish the Cave Project Group and joined the Forest Rescue Association, further cementing his commitment to spelunking and safety. In contrast, Martin, known for his smaller stature, speed, and strength, had a penchant for exploring various sections of the cave, willingly embracing more risks. Despite their differences in approach, their friendship thrived on a shared passion for exploration. While Roger excelled in steadfastness in being the first to enter the cave, Martin's curiosity led him to focus on exploring the Letic area, where Agena Cave was located. Despite the potential for significant discoveries, access to the submerged passageways in this region was frequently restricted due to the inherent dangers associated with exploration during the specific period. On Saturday, June 15, 1974, a pivotal moment in the Egin-Ashweth Cave's history unfolded as Roger Solari, accompanied by the renowned Martin Farr, embarked on a daring mission. Martin, a stalwart figure in cave diving, had earned global acclaim for his remarkable discoveries in the cave diving community. His journey into caving began at the tender age of 10, showcasing a remarkable passion for the discipline. As a testament to his dedication, Martin achieved his first discovery of new caves by the age of 16. His adventurous spirit and early accomplishments mark him as a true pioneer in the world of cave exploration. Together, Roger and Martin aimed to push the boundaries of exploration, extending the passages of Egin-Ashweth Cave from where John Parker had left off. In 1971 and 1972, significant diving explorations unfolded in the Agona-Wythith Cave, led notably by John Parker. However, the demanding nature of solo diving took a toll on Parker, leading to burnout. He realized that he was committing errors, potentially life-threatening, which were unusual for him in cave exploration. Recognizing the need for a break from navigating perilous water-filled caves, Parker decided to step back and hand the reins to someone else eager to make a mark, someone like Martin Farr. They recalled the achievements of John Parker, who had uncovered an additional 1,476 feet of passageway. So, Roger and Martin were poised with only one objective in mind: to surpass the point where John Parker had halted, delving into the uncharted sections of this mysterious underground realm. This initiative marked a new chapter in the ongoing saga of cave exploration, with Martin Farr ready to take up the challenge and push the boundaries of discovery. However, a month before their planned dive, Martin had already ventured into the cave system, although without Roger, who unfortunately had to bow out due to a knee injury. This unforeseen obstacle marked a poignant moment in the lead-up to their joint exploration: the discovery of a dream passage. In the course of their exploration, Martin Farr reached the point where John Parker had halted, discovering a vast passage that beckoned into the darkness. A passage that all cave divers dream of finding. Filled with excitement, Martin hurried down the passage, eager to unravel its mysteries. However, his exploration on this day came to an abrupt halt due to insufficient air in his tanks. But still, Martin was not satisfied, and he was ready for another exploration, this time around being well prepared. So, a month later in June 1974, Roger and Martin geared up for an extensive exploration. Their destination? The downward stream Sump 4 in the mainstream. Armed with 3 air cylinders, a pair of boots, and a line reel each, they encountered smooth progress until reaching Sump 4. Roger led the dive, laying line with his 400-foot reel, while Martin followed closely with the 1,000-foot reel. During the dive, Roger signaled difficulties with the sinuses, a challenge he had faced before. Despite Martin suggesting a return when the issue persisted, Roger, determined to continue the exploration, pressed on. They operated independently during the dive, allowing either of them to decide when to surface, an integral part of their plan. As Roger's line reached its end about 400 feet into the sump, it became evident that they were at a depth of 50 to 60 feet, and the passage continued to descend. Martin, nearing his first third limit of air, chose to continue, while Roger, with slightly less air, was urged to head back. Martin progressed into the deeper passage, around 150 feet later, where he should have turned back, but he noticed a gravel bank with a steep upward slope. Checking his pressure gauge, he realized he was well into his second third of air. In a desperate attempt for air, Martin ascended the slope, hoping for an air pocket. Raising higher and higher, just about 3 feet below the water's surface, he realized there was no breathing space. With only half a bottle of air remaining, Martin had to use it wisely to escape the cave. Pushing his limits to the extreme, Martin swiftly made his way out, spotting Roger near the passage roof at the shallow depth of 3 feet. Signaling to Roger that it was time to surface, Martin dropped his reel and Roger clung to his line. Both perilously low on air, the urgency to exit was paramount. Martin reached the deepest point and began the return journey along the tunnel. However, due to his rapid ascent, he experienced acute ear pain. Pausing on the line to clear his ears, Martin waited, but Roger failed to emerge. The situation grew tense as minutes passed without Roger's appearance. Martin's desperate escape. Realizing he lacked sufficient air to search for Roger in the tunnel, Martin made the tough decision to ascend and reach the surface. Relief washed over him as he emerged, but Roger's absence left him uneasy. Waiting for Roger, Martin grew increasingly concerned, pondering the possibilities of what might have transpired. As time passed, Martin, running out of air, faced a difficult choice. He couldn't wait any longer for Roger inside the cave, a decision aligned with professional diving practices. However, with Roger still absent upon Martin's return to the surface, he faced the dilemma of whether to risk re-entering the cave with his air reserve. Taking the risk, Martin re-entered the cave, pulling the line. However, it was slack. Proceeding about 430 feet or 131 meters further, he encountered the same issue. The line had been cut approximately 30 feet or 9 meters after the point where it was joined. With insufficient air to continue safely, Martin returned to the surface. He waited anxiously, faced with the grim reality of Roger's prolonged absence. Upon the return of John Elliott and his friends from their 9-hour dive, Martin shared the disconcerting news that Roger had not returned from the fourth sump. Swiftly, they reported the situation to the police, and the cave rescue team, initiating a response to the unfolding crisis, arrived on scene. And now it was time for search and rescue efforts. In response to the tragic incident, John Parker, renowned for his expertise, was called upon. On Sunday evening, the recovery team attempted to dive and retrieve Roger's body. Unfortunately, heavy rainfall in South Wales resulted in poor visibility, complicating their efforts. Despite spending the night at the site, the search was suspended due to the challenging conditions. After a few days, on the following Thursday, the search resumed with a team of 10 divers, including John Elliott, John Parker, and Colin Edmond, a local diver. Their focus shifted to the terminal sump where Roger was last seen. John Parker and Colin Edmond entered the cave, while the others waited at the surface. However, poor visibility persisted, and when Colin surfaced after reaching the third sump, he reported the challenging conditions. Undeterred, John Parker, armed with 4 air cylinders, continued the search alone. Despite laying over 500 feet of line and poor visibility, Roger's body remained elusive. After 3.5 hours, Parker returned to the surface. The collective decision of the 10 divers, after a brief meeting, was to call off the search to avoid further risks. The fruitless 10.5-hour effort marked a somber end to their quest to find Roger Solari. Regrettably, Roger's body could not be retrieved from Aiken Ashweth, leaving the circumstances of his fate shrouded in mystery within the cave. The cave diving community was left to grapple with the unknown, speculating on the possibility that he may have become entangled, leading to his decision to cut the line from the reel. Roger Solari's cheerful spirit would be sorely missed by his diving buddies and the members of his cave community in South Wales, Yorkshire, and Ireland, where he had left an indelible mark. And that concludes our fascinating journey into the depths of Ogof Aiken Ashweth, the longest cave system in the Langatok Escarpment. Moving on, at first glance, it looks like a deep blue spot in the river. People usually flock into the area, ready to swim and dive into the clear and seemingly safe water. But here's the twist. Beneath the surface lies a huge underwater cave. The spot isn't just risky in Texas, it's actually considered one of the most dangerous places on the entire planet. Here's what I'm talking about. The enigmatic Jacob's Well. Now, the story goes that in the mid-1850s, a settler arrived in Texas seeking a spot for a water-powered mill between San Antonio and Austin. While exploring along a creek, he noticed a rough area in the water resembling a bubbling cauldron. This turned out to be Jacob's Well, an outflow from a karst spring connected to the Trinity Aquifer. Jacob's Well initially had a powerful flow, creating an upside-down waterfall on the surface. A mill was built to harness this natural force, operating for decades until mid-20th century construction damaged the aquifer. The reduced outflow revealed a cavern beneath, turning Jacob's Well into a 12-foot diameter blue hole in the riverbed. The limestone rock, eroded with water, formed a large underground cave beyond what's visible in the river. Despite initial difficulty exploring due to strong currents, divers eventually delved into Jacob's Well, discovering its true size. While many enjoy swimming and cliff jumping into the river, Jacob's Well has gained notoriety as one of the deadliest diving sites globally, with tragic incidents marking its reputation over the years. The spring opening in the creek bed leads to Jacob's Well Cave, descending vertically about 30 feet before continuing at an angle. This cave system comprises silted chambers separated by narrow passages, reaching an average depth of 120 feet. Cave diving risks. Divers from the Jacob's Well Exploration Project have explored and mapped the cave, revealing 2 main conduits. The first passage extends approximately 4,500 feet from the surface, reaching a maximum depth of 137 feet. The second passage branches off from the primary conduit, spanning around 1,000 feet. While the cave attracts open water divers, not all possess the necessary training and equipment required for cave diving. Tragically, between 1964 and 1984, 9 deaths occurred at Jacob's Well due to inexperienced divers attempting to explore its depths without the required cave diving skills. This underscores the importance of proper training and equipment for those venturing into this captivating but perilous underwater cave system. Now, on the night of September 9th, 1979, 2 adventurous divers, Kent Maupin and Mark Brashear, along with a group of divers from Pasadena, set up camp at Jacob's Well in Wimberley. The mission? To explore the mysterious cave system. Eager to dive ahead of the large group and avoid disturbing the sediment, Kent and Mark entered the water at 23:30 while others set up camp. A dangerous descent and tragic consequences. Kent and Mark, both experienced divers in their early 20s, aimed not just to dive into the cave, but to reach the last recorded chamber, known for its deadly history. As they descended through the first chamber, they navigated a 30-foot drop to a bare rock platform. Moving sideways into the second chamber, they encountered a long, sloping environment. Chamber 2 led to the birth canal at around 75 feet, a narrowing passage into Chamber 3. Here, they found other divers exploring what was considered the last safe chamber. Undeterred, Mark and Kent had their eyes set on a more challenging prize. Chamber 4, a location with a tragic history that had claimed the lives of 4 other divers. Descending the sloping gravel floor to the entrance of Chamber 4, at around 90 feet deep, they reach depths where divers can experience nitrogen narcosis. This neurological effect, akin to the impact of drinking martinis, becomes more pronounced with depth. Kent, affected by nitrogen narcosis, took over the scuba gear, turned around, and backed into the tunnel leading to Chamber 4. Mark followed suit. Jay Moy, another diver in Chamber 3, observed Mark's questionable move without cave gear or a proper light. Joe, aware that Kent and Mark's steel tanks held less air than his aluminum ones and being deeper, understood the increased air consumption. So he attempted to catch Mark's attention, flashing his light in concern and banging on his tank with a knife to grab their attention. But there was no response. Mark and Kent, seemingly with tunnel vision, continued into the tunnel. For Joe, he knew that this would well mean the end for them. In an attempt to guide them back, he left one of his torches at the entrance to Chamber 4, hoping the 2 divers would follow it to find their way out. Upon reaching the surface, the once clear water of the well turned murky, possibly due to a gravel slide or the frantic movements of 2 divers in panic. Joe couldn't shake the grim realization that it was highly likely that Kent and Mark had met a tragic end in the unforgiving depths of Jacob's Well. He informed other divers of the unsettling events, setting the stage for a search and recovery mission. The hope for a rescue lingered in Joe's heart, but the harsh reality suggested otherwise. A call echoed through the local law enforcement channels, reaching Paul Batiglia, a police officer and seasoned cave diver. At the police station, he swiftly organized the rescue mission upon receiving the call. An hour later, he arrived at the home of Don Dibble, a former Navy diver, cave diving expert, and owner of the local dive shop. Both Batiglia and Dibble are members of the Hays County Volunteer Body Recovery Unit, and they understood the grim reality. This is not just a rescue, it's a body recovery. In a somber discussion, Dibble and Batiglia planned the operation, knowing the challenges they will face. Despite the distinction between rescue and recovery, their course of action remained similar. They called upon other members of the recovery unit, headed to Dibble's dive shop for necessary equipment, and made their way to Jacob's Well, just 15 minutes away. As they arrived at the site, darkness still blankets the surroundings. The group from Pasadena, already in the water, reported to Dibble that they haven't been able to recover either Mark or Kent. They started their brief that the 2 divers might be inside Chamber 4. Their certainty seemed from one diver's claim of witnessing equipment buried under a gravel slide in the passage leading down into Chamber 4. But what had happened? Kent and Mark had excavated the tunnel by shoveling loose gravel, risking their lives for the sake of exploring a few more square feet of submerged limestone. And so they were buried deep beneath Chamber 4 now. The stage was set for a challenging and crucial operation in the depths of Jacob's Well. How, you ask? The only safe retrieval method involved airlifting all the gravel out of the cave, starting from the top of the slope and working down. Talk about a heck of a lot of work, right? In an attempt to improve the challenging conditions, the recovery process took an unfortunate turn for the worse. Don Dibble, receiving conflicting reports about the feasibility of the mission, decided to descend into the well himself. Accompanied by Game Warden Calvin Turner, they left spare tanks at depths of 25 and 75 feet, while unreeling safety lines to guide them further into the well. To ensure the bodies were not floating above them, they directed their lights upward into the ceiling crevice of the third room. The entrance where the two divers had last been seen remained blocked. Don, aware of his remaining air supply, checked his submersible pressure gauge, showing 1,100 pounds per square inch, enough for approximately 10 minutes at that depth. With caution, he placed his head and shoulders into the entrance, gripping the safety line with one hand and illuminating the passage with the other. To his dismay, all he could see were small pieces of gravel striking his mask lens due to the water's flow through the constriction. The elusive sight of the missing divers remained hidden in the depths of Jacob's Well. Gravel bed. In the realization that removing the bodies hinged on clearing the unstable gravel bed, Don Dibble understood the perilous situation. However, it was too late. He became ensnared in the passage entrance due to a gravel slide. The water turned murky, obscuring visibility, and Don found himself trapped with his arms immobilized, unable to signal or bang on his tank. As he struggled, his breathing quickened and he rapidly ran out of air. Confronting the inevitability of his impending demise, Don remained remarkably composed, attempting to meet his fate quietly. Uncertain about the drowning process and its implications, he considered hastening it by either inhaling or drinking water. Fearing panic and thrashing if he inhaled water, which would cause embarrassment for his wife, he chose to drink the suffocating water. As he took a few gulps, dizziness set in and he resigned himself to his fate. In a sudden turn of events, an involuntary reflex prompted him to thrash around, freeing himself through his flooded mask. Calvin Turner, recognizing the dire situation, offered Don the regulator from the spare tank. Breathing in the welcomed air, Don found relief. However, as he ascended to the surface, a new set of problems emerged. The excessive air intake while diving caused some of it to enter his stomach rather than his lungs. The decreasing water pressure as he rose made the trapped air expand, adding a new layer of complexity to the already harrowing experience. Attempting to release the trapped air by burping proved unsuccessful for Don. Realizing the risk of decompression sickness and the urgency to ascend, he endured unbearable pain caused by the expanding gas. Upon surfacing, he displayed a physically distended abdomen resembling a woman 9 months pregnant. Removing his breathing regulator, Don let out a scream, but relief did not come until 12 hours later. Don's rare diving injury puzzled those around him, resembling some form of embolism where expanding air gets trapped in the lungs. The recommended treatment, a simulated dive in a recompression chamber, took place at Brooke Army Medical Center. Unfortunately, the severe pain persisted, prompting a transfer to another hospital. Here, X-rays revealed a startling diagnosis. His stomach wall had ruptured, leading to peritonitis. Astonishingly, Don should have already succumbed to a condition equivalent to having 5 ruptured appendixes. When the surgeon opened his swollen abdomen, it was akin to cutting into a basketball, highlighting the severity of his internal injuries. During Don's recovery from surgery, the search for the missing bodies persisted. Don Broad, a seasoned diver from Austin, known for his gruff and opinionated nature, took on the task. Despite his tough exterior, he had harbored a deep fascination with Jacob's Well since his childhood in El Campo. At 46 years old, he dove down deep to the opening of the last passage and peered inside. Spotting Dibble's dropped light, he observed a corridor filled with gravel, speculating that it contained the bodies. Realizing that Kent and Mark probably worked really hard to dig the tunnel by shoveling loose rocks that later had them perished, Broad decided the safest way to get the rocks out of the cave was to use a helicopter. They would airlift all the gravel out of the cave, starting from the top of the slope and working their way down. 2 days later, a flatbed truck arrived at Jacob's Well, carrying a white recompression chamber resembling a space capsule. This chamber, owned by Schaefer Diving Company, was brought in by the victims' families to retrieve the bodies. Louis Schaefer, the company owner, expressed optimism about the operation's success and became the first diver to descend. Visible from the surface until he reached the juncture at 25 feet, he exclaimed, "God Almighty," upon seeing the entrance to the final passage, signaling the challenges that lay ahead. Later that afternoon, Lewis's divers used a large hose to suction gravel from the 60-foot level, spewing it into Cypress Creek downstream from the well. Larger rocks were placed into burlap bags, tied to ropes by volunteer scuba divers, and hauled to the surface. Despite their persistent efforts, the challenging task proved arduous, as every foot of gravel removed seemed to be replaced by another. Despite difficulties, they continued their work diligently. Financial constraints led to a temporary halt in the search operation. When divers resumed after 2 days, they discovered that the opening they had diligently cleared for a week had nearly closed up again in their absence. Faced with the daunting realization that their efforts could last for weeks or months and with no compensation for their work, the situation seemed increasingly futile. A second opinion from a group of divers sent by Chet Brooks from Brown and Root affirmed what Lewis's team had reluctantly admitted to themselves. The most prudent course of action was to leave the bodies undisturbed and seal off Jacob's Well. 12 days after Kent Maupin and Mark Brashear tragically perished, the search for their bodies was officially terminated. Several months later, after his recovery, in January of 1980, Don, eager to prevent others from facing the same fate as Kent and Mark, took action at Jacob's Well. Bags of concrete were lowered into the cave, and over several hours, he built a wall over the entrance of the fourth chamber. The wall incorporated a metal grate, allowing water to flow while sealing the bodies inside. Surprisingly, this deterrent proved ineffective. Some divers equipped with the necessary tools removed the grate, leaving a message for Don on a plastic slate that read, "You can't keep us out." With the grate removed, divers continued to explore Jacob's Well, pushing the limits of its deeper section. 4 years after Kent and Mark's deaths, and 3 years after the gate installation, 2 members of an advanced diving class at Texas State University, Richard and Clark, aimed to complete a challenging dive. They navigated through the first 2 chambers and the third, reaching the squeeze where the gate had been installed. It's unclear whether divers had removed the gravel or if water flow had widened the crevice, but by the time Richard and Clark dived, it was accessible. Removing their air tanks, they shimmied backward through the narrow crevice. Clark's tanks got snagged on rocks, and despite efforts, he had to let them go to join Richard on the other side. Richard handed Clark his regulator, and they began buddy breathing, marking the end of their exploration for that day. What happened next is a story for another day. A decade after Mark and Kent's incident, most of Mark's remains were found, bringing some closure. Unfortunately, Kent's body was never recovered. Exactly 21 years later, Kent's remains were finally discovered, providing his family the closure that they had sought for so long, and he could be laid to rest. Speaking of Kent's body being found, in our next story, a diver vanished mysteriously, his body untouched for a decade. Then, a chance discovery sparked a daring mission to retrieve him. Little did expert diver Don Shaw know, tragedy awaited. Well, this is Dave Shaw. He was a Christian, born on July 20th, 1954. At 50 years old, he and his wife, Ann Shaw, lived in Hong Kong, where they went to a small Christian group. They had 2 kids, Stephen Shaw and Lisa Moyers. Don Shirley, on the other hand, was an electronics engineer in the British Army for 22 years. Apart from his extraordinary experience level, Shirley is most known for his relationship with David Shaw. Shirley, together with his wife, currently own and operate Technical Diving Africa and the flooded mine system of Komati Springs in the Mpumalanga region in South Africa. Now, before we get even further, we need to understand the layout of Bushman's Hole. Bushman's Hole, on the edge of the Kalahari Desert in South Africa, is one of the strangest places on Earth. For some really daring explorers, this spot holds some amazing but kind of crazy tales. It's a hole with fresh water, so the water is clear and nice. But get this, it's almost 900 feet deep, as tall as the Eiffel Tower. On the top, it's a small opening, but around 66 feet down, it widens to about 400 feet, like an upside-down funnel. Now let's talk about Dave and Don's dive. On December 17, 1994, almost 10 years before their dive, a 20-year-old named Deon Dreyer from Johannesburg, South Africa, was practicing diving at Bushman's Hole. He was part of a team planning to dive to 492 feet. Deon was helping as a dive support. On that sad December day, Deon didn't come back up from the water. People who were diving with him said Deon got lost when they were coming back to the surface. They thought maybe he passed out because of too much oxygen or too much carbon dioxide, which can happen when you breathe a lot underwater in such a deep place. Deon's dad, Theo, got divers to try to find Deon's body, but they only found his helmet. Deon's parents left without their son's body, placing a plaque on a rock wall near the entrance to Bushman's Hole as a remembrance for their son. This was a big deal in the local cave diving group because usually they find the diver's body. But for Deon, it didn't happen. For a long time, people thought they couldn't get his body back because it was too deep. The plaque was a reminder to divers that there was a body down there. On October 24th, Dave Shaw and Don Shirley went diving in Bushman's Hole. Don, talking to NPR, said that the hole is so big and dark that even strong flashlights don't work very well. He explained, "It's pitch black, totally pitch black. If you shine the light anywhere, it just disappears. The darkness swallows the light. Being 900 feet deep in a cave is like being on the moon. Actually, I think more people have walked on the moon than have gone that deep in caves. It's a fact. 12 people have walked on the moon, but only 6 people have successfully dived beyond 820 feet. During Dave and Dan's 9-hour and 40-minute dive, Dave's light caught something, an old wetsuit filled with bones. Dave swam over to the body, and he knew exactly who it was, but the body was stuck in decades of mud and silt. Dave, breathing hard and already a minute over his planned time, thought, "I shouldn't work this hard at this depth. It wasn't in the plan." So they had to leave the body there. Once they were back on the surface, Don and Dave called Deon Dreyer's parents. "We're going to retrieve your son's body," they said. The two divers saw it as an important mission and started planning the dive to recover the body right away. And I know what you're asking. What are the dangers of diving 900 feet deep? Let me explain this in a nutshell. When you're diving so deep, planning ahead is super important. Every 33 feet you go down, the risks you face basically double. Too much nitrogen can make you feel drunk suddenly, and too much helium can make you twitch uncontrollably. If you breathe too heavily, like when trying to remove Deon's body, you might pass out. There's another safety element to think about too. Decompression sickness, also called the bends. Coming up to the surface too fast doesn't give the gases in your body enough time to decompress. These gas bubbles can block blood flow or cause other really serious problems. Now, diving as deep as Don and Dave were planning needs a lot of special training because they weren't using a regular diving system. They had these things called rebreathers. Again, this sounds too technical for my non-diver friends, right? Well, when you're doing a regular dive in open water, you use what's called an open circuit system. In this system, no air is reused. You breathe in air from your tank with your mouthpiece, and when you breathe out, the used air goes into the water around you. With an open circuit system, one air tank usually lasts about an hour, depending on how deep you are and how well you control your breathing. Now, Dave and Don were doing something different. They were using a closed circuit system, which involves a rebreather and other gear that lets you reuse some or all of your breathing air. When you breathe in, air goes from the tank to your mouthpiece, just like with an open circuit system. But when you breathe out, the air doesn't go into the water. Instead, it goes back into your tank so you can use it again. A rebreather is more than just a mouthpiece. It's a whole system to provide and recycle breathing air. When you breathe out through the rebreather, it goes through a part called a carbon dioxide scrubber, which takes out the carbon dioxide. Then the clean air goes to the counter lungs, a device that helps with inhaling and exhaling by keeping the same pressure as the diver's lungs. If you're not a deep sea expert, I get it, it can sound confusing. The main thing to know is that a rebreather lets you reuse your air. According to a study, closed-circuit divers use 17 times less air than open-circuit divers. Because they recycle air, closed-circuit divers can stay underwater longer. This is the crucial part that lets Dave and Don go on these super deep, long dives. But even with recycling air, they still needed to carry 6 air tanks. They had a really, really long dive ahead of them. And now that you know what rebreathers are, let's get back to the story. Just a bit over 2 months after finding Dion's body, Don Shirley and Dave Shaw went back into the waters at Bushman's Hole. Don had done everything he could to make it safe during the planning. He had 35 extra tanks of air in the water, enough for him, Dave, and even some other divers in case the rebreathers failed. They set up a winch system to pull a diver on a stretcher up the cliffs to a decompression chamber that the police brought in. Don also got a doctor to be there in case of any medical problems. Don was sure they had planned well. He kept saying that this was an attempted body recovery. No one had ever tried to recover a body at this depth, and Don didn't want to lose any divers on this mission. The day before the dive, Dave, Don, and the other divers had their final talk. Dave was the one who had planned to go the deepest and get Dion's body. He told the group, "The most important person on the dive is you. If you have a problem, deal with your problem and forget about me. It's better to have one person dead than 2. In private, Don asked Dave if he wanted him to come all the way down if there were any problems. After thinking for a moment, Dave said, "Yes, but only come down if I signal." Usually in cave dives, flashing a light or waving it around is a distress signal. With that, Don told the group one last thing. "If Dave or I don't make it, we stay there. That's the end of the story. We don't want to be recovered." In his interview with NPR, Don recalled their entry into Bushman's Hole on January 8, 2005. They dropped their short line, or safety line, into the deep water. Dave went in first, and 14 minutes later, Don followed. By this time, Dave should have reached Dion's body and be almost done with the recovery, slowly ascending to meet Don at their meeting point of 725 feet. However, at around 500 feet during Don's descent, he saw Dave's light right below him, but it remained still. Too still. Don expected to see Dave's bubbles ascending, but there were none. Something was clearly wrong. More than 20 minutes into Dave's dive, and he should have been on his way up. Don knew there was no room for mistakes. Dave hadn't signaled for help, but Don sensed that he needed it. A motionless diver at this depth likely meant a dead diver, but Don couldn't leave Dave without checking if there was anything he could do. Descending past his planned depth, reaching 833 feet, deeper than ever before, Don heard a loud crack. His rebreather controller on his forearm had imploded under the intense pressure. It wasn't a huge issue for Don. He had trained for this scenario and knew what to do. He had to manually add oxygen to his gas mixture, but this was a full-time task, and he couldn't attempt to save Dave any longer. At this depth, problems can quickly lead to death. Oxygen becomes toxic after about 180 feet, and Don had accidentally added too much. He knew he was in serious danger, but couldn't ascend too quickly. Don says, "The surface is not somewhere that you can actually go to solve a problem. When you have a problem, you have to solve that problem where you are. And if you don't solve that problem, you don't come back." And I was thinking, okay, Dave might come back. He's either dead or he's working his way back, but all I could deal with was what was right in front of me. But what really had happened to Dave for him to be still with no movement? Dave reached the bottom of the cave faster than planned, over a minute and a half ahead. Right away, he started working on retrieving Dion's body. He slipped a body bag over Dion's legs, but accidentally kicked up silt, revealing Dion's mummified body floating eerily in front of him. The unexpected scenario threw off the recovery team's plans. The body, no longer stuck, made bagging it a challenge. Dave struggled audibly, grappling with the floating body. His breathing distress increased, and Don wondered why Dave didn't abandon the body, as their plans involved the bag floating to the surface. Dave, responding to narcosis in his determination, pressed on. As Dave tried to control the floating body, he let go of his light, using both hands. Dion resisted being placed in the bag, and Dave, now confused, struggled for control. After almost 4 minutes, Dave attempted to cut away Dion's dive tanks, per the plan, but his breathing escalated. Losing footing, he scrambled back with frequent grunts of effort. Narcosis clouded Dave's judgment. His main focus became Dion's body, feeling the effects of 7 or 8 martinis. Recovering the body, Dave turned to ascend, but got snagged on Dion's dive tanks. Desperate, he tried to sort out the tangled lines, his breathing becoming increasingly rapid. At 21 minutes into the dive, Dave began to pass out from high carbon dioxide levels. A minute later, there were no more movements. Dave Shaw was dead. Now for Don, on the other hand. Each minute at this depth added an hour of decompression time on his way back up. Slowly ascending, he now faced 10 hours ahead of him. Due to high oxygen levels, he started to pass out. Then, a helium bubble got into his ear, affecting his balance completely. Without a sense of direction, he lost his grip on the guideline, a crucial lifeline, and the pitch-black darkness at this depth. Passing out and waking up, he swam in circles, desperately trying to find his way out of the cave. Don managed to grab the guideline, but extreme vertigo hit him, leading to underwater vomiting between breaths. Despite the ordeal, he stabilized and slowly ascended to the surface, meeting a support diver. Using underwater communication tools, Don wrote, "I'm okay, and Dave's not coming back." Hopeful, but realizing the reality, Don, supported by the diver, struggled to the surface. After a 12.5-hour dive, he emerged from Bushman's hole, winched up the cliff face, and quickly entered a decompression chamber before being transported to a Johannesburg hospital the next morning. Don survived, but Dave didn't make it out of Bushman's hole that day. Dave was dead. Over the next 2 weeks, Don underwent 11 decompression chamber sessions totaling 27 hours to address the helium bubble in his ear. It took more than a month for him to regain clear thinking and mobility. Although left with permanent balance impairment, Don resumed cave diving a few months into recovery. A week after the failed mission, Dave's body was found 66 feet under the surface, entangled under an underwater ceiling inside the cave, along with the body bag used to retrieve Dion. Despite the tragedy, Dave had completed his mission, recovering Dion's body and bringing it to the surface. 10 days after Bushman's hole gave back the bodies, Theo and Marie Dreyer visited their son. Stepping into the morgue, Marie wasn't sure what to expect. Seeing Dion's fully fleshed out body, her tears stopped and she felt a sense of happiness. Theo was amazed that Dion's legs still remained their athletic shape, and Shaw, Dave Shaw's wife, later scattered Dave's ashes across South Africa, a place he had come to know and love deeply. In a eulogy for her father, Lisa Shaw wrote, "I am at peace. Because he died doing something he loved, very few of us will ever get that privilege." Imagine being stuck in a dark and cold cave, not knowing where you are, a dark and chilly place, with the only company being the lifeless body of a friend. Well, this all happened about 10 years ago in the Cova dels Arquets region in Spain. Ricard and Denisio, two adventurous friends who loved exploring, went on a really tough journey. They had no idea about the dangers waiting for them. First things first, the Cave of Cova del Arquet. Cova del Arquet is a limestone cave in the Morning area, measuring around 262 feet in length. It's a favorite spot for underwater photography enthusiasts and attracts many divers because of its accessibility and clear visibility. Locals often choose it as a common dive site. Upon reaching the location, the dive begins, and you'll continue for another 164 to 196 feet along the sea bottom until you find the entrance mouth. The entrance descends about 33 feet below the sea surface. The opening is approximately 8 feet wide, leading to a rising conduit filled with stones, reaching up to 13 feet. The cave extends to a depth of around 131 feet, typically suitable for experienced divers. Despite its reputation as a seemingly easy dive, Cova del Arquet holds a mysterious secret that has captivated expert divers. Towards the end of the cave, there's a smaller opening that leads to a murky cavity. What makes it truly intriguing is that, until now, no one has successfully navigated through this opening. Its obscurity, coupled with the unpredictable visibility depending on sea conditions, adds an element of challenge and mystique. For quite some time, this cave remained a hidden gem known only to a select group of divers exploring the captivating coast of Lys Estate. The unexplored passage at the cave's end adds an air of adventure and the unknown, making it a tantalizing mystery for those brave enough to dive into its depths. But the cave couldn't stay a secret for too long, especially when the sun lit up the blue waters, making their adventurous hearts sparkle. On a Saturday morning, July 19, 2014, four friends sailed from Les Ostres port. Their friendship and passion for exploring pushed them toward the captivating beauty of Captain Labari, an amazing cliff formed when the Medici Islands broke away from the mainland thousands of years ago. Little did they know what awaited them ahead of their exploration. The dive begins. Under the water, there was a tricky maze of caves made by the same forces that shaped the big cliff. Not scared of the possible dangers, three friends, Ricard, Denisio, with another friend whose name we don't know, got ready with their diving gear. They were excited to explore the secrets underwater. At the same time, the fourth friend stayed up above, keeping a close eye to make sure they stayed safe during this bold adventure. Without any ropes or clear signs to guide them, the brave trio swam in and out of numerous underwater caves. Each cave had its own special beauty, filled with beautifully patterned rocks and a variety of sea creatures. Among their discoveries, they stumbled upon the entrance of the Cova del Arquet, also known as the Cave of the Lobsters. The entrance went about 33 feet below the sea surface, tempting them to explore further. If it was a movie scene, this is the place you wish to tell the actor not to go that way. Lit by their flashlights, Ricard, Denisio, and their diving friend ventured 148 feet into the underwater stretch of the Arquet's cave. This part of the cave was known for lobsters, earning it the second name. But as the rocky part ended, the grotto's texture changed. It shifted from rock to clay, leading to a narrow, unexplored area. Their friend began to feel scared. Through hand signals, he made it clear he wanted to go back up. Respecting his decision, Ricard and Denisio understood and agreed, but little did they know that continuing without him would be a fatal mistake. Lost in darkness. Ricard and Denisio kept swimming, covering an extra 115 feet along the sea bottom. But with each kick of their flippers, the water got cloudier. Despite the decreasing visibility, they were determined to keep exploring. When they hit 262 feet, they both agreed it was time to end their dive. However, an unexpected challenge awaited them. The silt in the water made them lose their sense of direction completely. Their movement stirred up the sediment, turning the water into a murky haze. Little did they know the path they took created a thick cloud of muddy water, forming a confusing black wall behind them. The way they came was now hidden, wrapped in a dark and unclear mess without any visual clues. Ricard and Denisio found themselves in a tough spot with no obvious way out. The situation got even worse as they realized their air supply was running critically low in their diving tanks. The search for an exit turned into a race against time. Just when things seemed bleak, they saw a tiny crack in the ceiling above. A faint glimmer of light peeked through, tempting them to explore. Fueled by desperation and determination, they swam toward the crack, their hearts racing. In a bold move, Ricard and Denisio took a risky gamble, deciding to squeeze through the unknown crack, unaware of where it might lead them. The miraculous escape. The tight passage pressed against their chests and backs as they moved forward. With every inch gained, the fear of a possible dead end closing in, sealing their fate by suffocation, weighed heavily on the two. The passage angled upwards towards the surface, about 262 feet from the cave entrance, and led them to an underground lake, a pocket of air as if it had been waiting for them for centuries. Taking off their equipment, Ricard and Denisio, with their heads out of the water and bodies partly submerged, felt like they had just cheated death. They took the chance to celebrate their miraculous escape, capturing the incredible turn of events in a couple of photos. One picture showed Ricard, his face filled with a mix of relief and excitement. The other featured Denisio, his expression a mix of gratitude and disbelief. And the unexpected twist that awaited the Gaius rescue divers who would find them alive, Ricard and Denisio found solace in a renewed sense of humor. As time passed, worry grew among Ricard and Denisio's friends on the surface. The Gaius of Liscarded team, responsible for securing open water swimmers and captive crews, was on duty that morning. Around 11 in the morning, a distress call reached the team from the concerned friends of Ricard and Denisio. Corporal Fernando Aguirre, the Gaius group leader, quickly organized the team for an urgent return trip to the dive site before nightfall. Though they had little hope, they realized that by now, the air in Ricard and Denisio's cylinders would likely have run out, leading to a tragic drowning. Unbeknownst to those on the surface, Ricard and Denisio were still trapped within the air pocket they had found. The bubble, about 322 square feet in size and 4.9 feet high, felt like a refuge in the midst of their ordeal. It held a substantial amount of air, estimated to be around 1,236 cubic feet. However, their prolonged stay within the confined space had serious consequences. Death. Why, you ask? Well, breathing, crucial as it was, gradually filled the limited airspace with carbon dioxide, silently and insidiously poisoning Ricard and Denisio within the refuge that they sought. Unbeknownst to them, the invisible gas jeopardized their survival. As time passed, the rising levels of CO2 in the air pocket took its toll. The once life-giving oxygen was replaced by this toxic byproduct, affecting their cognitive and physical functions. Ricard and Denisio, realizing the danger, felt the insidious effects impairing their abilities. As time wore on, their plight became more dire. Hydration, disorientation, and hypothermia weighed heavily on their weakened bodies. Ricard, particularly, bore the brunt of the carbon dioxide, experiencing its impact severely. Their once vibrant spirits faded, replaced by a somber resignation to their grim fate. In their struggle, Ricard's strength dwindled, making it harder to stay above the water. Denisio, summoning every ounce of strength, managed to pull Ricard's almost lifeless body back above the surface, fighting against the looming doom. 5 excruciating hours passed, taking a devastating toll on Ricard and Denisio. With no air left in their tanks and the silt-laden freezing water, the air pocket that once sustained them became their silent executioner. Cognitive and physical paralysis set in, rendering them helpless. Ricard's weakened body slipped into the water again, beyond his control. In a heart-wrenching moment, Denisio, drained of strength, could only watch as his friend's lifeless body sank. Alone and with no energy left to stay afloat, Denisio was certain that he would die as well. At 5 in the evening, a Gaius team led by Corporal Aguirre entered the cave with a fellow diver. With determination, they ventured into the challenging and rocky terrain, swimming 148 feet, propelled by the relentless pursuit of finding Ricard and Denisio. Their progress was abruptly halted as they encountered the murky aftermath of the victims' frantic escape, swirling sediment, obscuring their vision. The corporal activated the Guardia Civil's National Speleo Diving Group, preparing for the rescue. Biologists, diving centers, underwater photographers, and fishermen were called, but their knowledge of the cave was limited. The search resumed on Sunday with little hope of finding them alive. Specialists from all over the region arrived in the early morning to assist. The incident became public, attracting dozens of journalists on the second day. They followed the line set up by the corporal and his partner from the port. The first 2 divers reached the clay area with improved visibility after the mud settled during the night. The fissure, where Ricard and Denisio had fled, was visible. The diver who entered first realized turning around was impossible due to the narrowness. Proceeding forward, he reached the bubble where Ricard and Denisio were found. In that underground lake, the civil guard's flashlight revealed Ricard's lifeless body floating in his neoprene suit and Denisio clinging to the rock, emitting a moan of agony as he exhaled his last breath. A miraculous survivor, Denisio, utterly stunned, was disoriented, dehydrated, hypothermic, and breathing heavily. He refused to wear air equipment, so the rescue diver had to administer oxygen by emptying several bottles in front of his face, brought on various trips. Isotonic drinks followed, but convincing him to follow and submerge again proved challenging. Denisio, confused and unfamiliar with the surroundings and rescuers, resisted collaboration. As such, the corporal quickly surfaced and convinced Denisio's diving friend, who was with him, to join in the effort to save Denisio. Not completely comfortable with this, the friend decided it was necessary. Aware of the danger this rescue mission posed, he followed the corporal into the cave with other rescue divers. They made their way down to the cavern with breathable air. Seeing a friendly and familiar face improved the situation greatly. By that afternoon, the corporal decided to sedate Denisio because time was running out, realizing it was the only way to get him out alive. And no more than 24 hours after entering the cave, Denisio finally emerged, accompanied by the corporal, the rescue team, and his friend. With Denisio safe, they had to return to recover Ricard's body. Denisio became the first diver in Spain to survive such an accident. After the media attention settled, the corporal initiated a thorough investigation to understand why the dive ended tragically. He conducted a 3-year investigation into the events, concluding that Ricard died due to hypercapnia, a condition where there's too much carbon dioxide in the bloodstream, which can be fatal, as seen in Ricard's case. The report highlighted that both divers lacked the necessary training and took excessive risks, especially diving without thread installation. Rumors spread during the investigation, suggesting Denisio's responsibility or a lack of help to Ricard. However, the report clarified that Denisio tried twice to save Ricard, recorded on their dive computers. Denisio didn't want to comment on the events, as those involved reflect on the haunting events that transpired in the cave in 2014. It's a chilling reminder of the fragility of life and the thin line between triumph and tragedy, emphasizing the importance of using a rope for cave divers to ensure a safe return. Well, imagine that you are in the face of unknown challenges like Denisio and Ricard. What do you think is the key to ensuring a safe return? The Polonora Cave. Speaking of cave diving, one of these underground systems is the Polonora Cave, which has been graced by the presence of many cave divers and was greatly explored by a diver named Artur Kozlowski. The cave, situated in Kiltartan County, Galloway, Ireland, lies beneath a majestic beech tree on John Nolan's farmland. The cave holds a rich history, with the steps bearing imprints from a time when the community regularly fetched water from its well. The remarkable feature of Polonora Cave is its consistent water supply, even during dry seasons with minimal rainfall. The secret lies in the cave's limestone landscape, characterized by karst formations and underground streams that are more prone to flooding than drought. Approximately 196 feet north of Nolan's farmland is the entrance to Polonora Cave. Upon entering, one encounters a shaft that deposits thick layers of fine clay, covering the cave floor. Divers need to be cautious, as disturbing this area results in a complete loss of visibility, and the settled particles take a considerable time to clear. The cave's roof is made up of boulder clay and loose rocks, creating a unique underground environment. While many shafts have been explored, indicating a significant length and depth, there are still numerous undiscovered mysteries waiting to be unveiled within the depths of Polonora Cave. Now, approaching the forbidden Polonora Caves was a big no-no, with locals always scared that the ground might just collapse if someone got too close. The cave had this mystical reputation because of the lurking danger inside. These caves were the leftovers of an ancient underground system filled with collapsed caves, water parts, and hidden caverns. Kozlowski caught wind of the Polonora Caves and got super interested in being the first to map them out entirely. But let me tell you what, it was risky business. Diving in those caves meant facing numerous dangers. Disorientation could hit if your dive line broke, or worse, if you didn't have one set up. Poisonous gas pockets lurked in the water-filled caves, and gas narcosis could mess with your head. Being deep underwater meant panicking was a real threat. A freaked-out diver might grab your gear, rip off your dive mask, or kick up sediment, leaving you clueless about which way is up. And if your lights went kaput, well, you'd be trapped in the dark. Plus, you couldn't just swim to the surface if things went south. You had to navigate the same maze that took you deep into the cave. And don't forget, you're always running out of air. Despite all of these risks, the mysterious allure of the Polonora Caves had Artur Kozlowski hooked. Speaking of, here's a little of Artur Kozlowski's life. Artur Konrad Kozlowski, born on October 17, 1977, was a highly talented and dedicated cave explorer. Throughout his life, he achieved significant success by exploring new caves and connecting different cave systems, pushing the boundaries of cave diving depth in Great Britain and Ireland. In 2006, he made a remarkable dive, reaching a depth of 338 feet. Originally from Poznan, Poland, Artur relocated to Ireland, where he spent his final years before his passing in 2011. In Poland, he worked as a quantity surveyor, and he continued his professional pursuits in his new environment. Notably, he contributed to projects such as the Aviva Stadium and Houston Square developments in Dublin. Additionally, he played a role in compiling maps for Galway County Council and the National Roads Authority, particularly for the design and development of the M18 motorway. While he was already a qualified diver with 13 warm water dives under his belt before arriving in Ireland, his interest in underwater exploration reached new heights in the country. Despite his proficiency as an open water diver, he recognized the distinctive challenges of cave diving, understanding that it required a different set of skills than the graceful floating experienced in open waters. And caves have many awful tight turns, many of which are dark and challenging. The uncertainty of what lies beyond the next turn adds an element of mystery, requiring individuals to navigate and decipher the cave's secrets on their own. Venturing into uncharted territories within a cave is a journey toward potential discoveries, but it also entails engaging in perilous maneuvers. This is why cave diving demands a diver's exceptional training and skills. And so, what did he do? In 2007, recognizing the need for specialized training, he underwent cave dive training with Martin Farr, a renowned Welsh cave diver instructor widely regarded as one of the best in Ireland. To hone his skills, Artur chose Hell Complex, a part of the Greenhole's group of underwater sea caves located off Dolan, County Clare, as his training ground. This experience equipped him with the expertise required to navigate the intricate and challenging underwater cave systems. Artur's discoveries and achievements. Upon commencing his cave diving endeavors shortly after completing his training, he delved into exploring and mapping previously undiscovered passages. His initial breakthrough came with the first traverse between Hell's Kitchen and Robertson's Cave near Reef Complex. He played a pivotal role in extending cave systems in both Ireland and Spain, leaving a lasting mark on the exploration landscape. One of his most noteworthy achievements was the extension of the Marble Arch cave system in County Fermanagh. Artur's diving connections to Pratt's Pot Cascades doubled the cave system's length from 2.7 miles to an impressive 6 miles. These connections were later linked to the newly established Monastery Sink Upper Cradle system, expanding its reach to 7.1 miles, making it the longest cave in Northern Ireland. He not only set records for the longest cave, but also established another milestone for the deepest cave in Great Britain and Ireland, located in Plotamary near Killavally, County Mayo, Ireland. This cave system reaches a depth of 338 feet. His achievements in cave exploration included navigating the challenging underwater passages of the Fort region, covering a distance of 6.2 miles. Additionally, he discovered and explored Polandro, the third deepest sump in Great Britain and Ireland, measuring 0.6 miles in length and reaching a depth of 269 feet. In recognition of his outstanding contributions to cave exploration, he received an award at the annual Polish Travel and Outdoor Sports event held in Gdynia in March of 2011. During a dive that tugged at his heart, on Sunday, September 4th, 2011, he found himself inside a cave surrounded by loud rumbling. Anxious, he checked his gear, fearing a cave collapse or earthquakes. Terrified at the thought of being trapped, he listened closely and discovered it was just traffic noise from the road above. Artur, making strides in mapping the Planora cave system, had only 3 caves left. His mission was to connect Poltalin and Poltafil, tackling the most dangerous Planar 10. The success of this mission would prove a connection between the 2 caves. He believed forging the connection from Poltafil in 2009 would be easier. Leaving his dive line about a mile from the entrance, he entered Potterville. Additional ropes were set up at the surface for a possible retreat. Facing a powerful flow, he descended carefully to 69 feet, pausing at this unprecedented depth. Despite the heavy flow behind him, Artur, in control, knew the risks ahead. At that depth, a descending channel emerged. He reached 196 feet, but panic set in as his diving line broke. Descending further, he expected to see the large reel tied the year before. Instead, the line was loose, tied behind a small boulder. In this extremely scary situation, he attached a fresh reel, navigating a narrow and sharp passage. The passage rose, then descended across a level, clean floor, revealing the unpredictable challenges of cave exploration. However, Artur realized he was still moving in the right direction, having faith he was on the correct track. After 2.5 years and 45 dives on both sides, he was shocked to discover the connection with Poltalin. Yet, the moment held a surprising emotion for him. Instead of elation, he felt sadness, perhaps because it was all over. After numerous challenging and exhausting dives with close calls, the link between Palafil and Poltalin was finally found, a significant achievement for Artur. However, he still had one more task, mapping out Planora 10 fully, the Demise Descent. With careful preparation, time, and multiple dives, Artur attempted this daunting task over a weekend. On Monday, September 5th in 2011, he went diving as usual, depositing stage oxygen bottles for decompression and emergencies. Knowing the risks, he made arrangements with friends to raise the alarm if he didn't return by 9 p.m. At 2 p.m., Artur went into the cave, telling his friends he'd be out by 5 p.m. Since it was a super rainy day, his pals chilled out while Artur explored underwater. But when 5 p.m. rolled around and he didn't show up, his friends got worried. Since they weren't expert divers, they reached out to their more experienced buddies, and soon the whole crew was on high alert. Entering Planora 10, Artur had about 6 hours before needing to come out due to air limitations. He pushed himself through confined sections, swiftly moving toward his dream of fully mapping the cave. However, when he wasn't back by 5 p.m., concern grew among his friends, leading to the involvement of professional rescue divers. As news spread, media activity heightened in the local town. Specialist search and rescue teams from Ireland, Wales, and England joined the rescue attempt. Unfortunately, the hope of finding Artur alive diminished quickly due to the challenging cave conditions. Conflicting reports emerged, suggesting Artur had gone too far, or that even if his body was found, bringing it to the surface might be impossible. Despite the uncertainty, they held on to the hope that Artur, experienced in handling close calls, would find a way to survive until supplemental oxygen could be delivered. Recovering Artur's body. The initial search was coordinated by Artur's friend, Jim Marney, who was devastated by the situation. The local town became a hive of media activity as everyone anxiously awaited news about Artur's fate. Jim, renowned as one of the area's most skilled divers, was seen as the person with the best chance of rescuing Artur. The devoted father risked his life, dropping everything to bring Artur back to his family. As a member of the Irish Cave Rescue Organization, Jim spent Monday night tirelessly searching for possible air pockets within the cave, where he thought Artur might be hiding. Despite the extreme danger, Jim conducted dive after dive, inspecting various areas of the cave. On Monday night, when hope seemed to dwindle, Jim discovered a dive line that Artur had set up, running the entire length of the cave. British cave divers Rick Stanton and John Bellathan, considered among the best in Europe, were called in to assist in the rescue mission due to their extensive experience and training in technical diving environments. Arriving in Ireland on Wednesday evening, over 48 hours since the initial alarm, they joined Jim inside the cave, diving down 1,200 feet without success. Simultaneously, Jim explored an unsearched part of the 800-meter wide cave, about 52 meters deep. Connor McGrath of the Irish Cave Rescue Organization revealed the discovery of a large airspace halfway into the cave, providing hope that Artur might be inside. Another airspace near the surface added to their optimism. Locals, though aware of the cave's dangers, respected Artur's courage in taking on the challenging mission of mapping it. The skilled diver's decision to explore the cave was seen as an honor by the community. Tragically, Jim Warner found Artur's body in an underwater passage around 6 p.m. on Wednesday. It took Jim an hour to dive into the narrow passage where Artur's body lay, fully equipped with oxygen tanks and a guide rope, just over a mile from the cave's entrance. Artur's situation was heart-wrenching as he couldn't find an air pocket with enough oxygen to survive. While being able to bring his body back to the surface and Jim's discovery provided some consolation, Artur was given the highest respect when his lifeless body was brought above ground. A doctor confirmed his demise, and he was taken to University College Hospital Galway for a post-mortem examination. However, the autopsy report contradicted the assumption of a lack of air, as he had sufficient supply for more than 6 hours, planning only a 3-hour dive. When his body was recovered, all of his equipment remained intact and attached. So the question remains, what could have taken the life of an experienced diver? No one can tell. News of Artur's story spread throughout the nation, and when his passing was confirmed, the entire country mourned together. The realization that they would never see him again left everyone deeply saddened. His friends, devastated by his loss, paid tribute by creating a film about his life called Riders of the Storm, featuring footage from his own camera. The film was screened by the Sub-Aqua Societies of Trinity College Dublin and University College Galway, earning a prestige award at a Polish film festival. Despite the inherent risks of cave diving, Artur remained passionately devoted to the sport until the very end. His unwavering commitment reflects a trait shared by many successful individuals, an undeterred pursuit of their passions, even in the face of death. Artur went beyond the limits set by his mentor, Martin Farr, the Welsh cave diving instructor. His legacy lives on in the cave diving community through his discoveries of new caves. While recognizing Artur's impact on his community and the world, the Irish Speleology planned a memorial for him in August 2012 to be held in Polonora Cave. Artur's contributions made him a true hero in the eyes of the Kiltartan community, his friends, and his family. And in 2013, a fundraising page was created to collect funds for a headstone for Kozlowski's grave in Kiltartan and a plaque at the entrance to Polonora 10. The engraving of the plaque and headstone was done by a stonemason based in Gort on September 6, 2014, marking the 3rd anniversary of Kozlowski's passing. Friends and family gathered for the unveiling of the gravestone and plaque. Thanks for joining us on this mesmerizing journey into the world of cave exploration and the remarkable life of Artur Kozlowski. What could have possibly led to the untimely end of this experienced cave diver? Finally, we have the story of the world's most perilous cave known to human beings, the Eagle's Nest Cave. Infamous for its multitude of tragic incidents. But before we do a deep dive, I know what you're thinking. What does this cave look like? Eagle's Nest Cave ranks among the top 10 most perilous cave systems globally, renowned for its treacherously narrow and alluring underwater passages. Situated in the remote wilderness of the pines of Chesahowitzka Wildlife Management Area in west central Florida, Eagle's Nest Sink has claimed the lives of 13 divers since 1981. Above the surface, it appears as a simple sinkhole beneath murky waters, but below lies a complex cave system shaped like a sink with a daunting deep drain plunging into the Earth's crust. Despite its modest depth of approximately 300 feet, underwater conditions make every foot crucial, often determining the difference between life and death. Between 1999 and 2003, Eagle's Nest Sink was closed to the public due to safety concerns, reflecting its reputation as a challenging environment unfit for inexperienced divers. Pressure from diving enthusiasts eventually led Florida to reopen the site, though the state had previously considered banning cave diving altogether due to rising fatalities nationwide, especially in Florida, a hotspot for the sport. The cave's narrow passages present a formidable challenge for divers, often requiring them to squeeze tightly to navigate through the constricted entrances. Once inside, the cave system reveals expansive and stunning chambers like the ballroom, the super room, and the pit. These large, beautiful spaces contrast sharply with the perilous nature of the environment. It's a place of dangerous beauty, where its grandeur attracts explorers despite the risks that it holds. And this is what attracted the three best friends, Chris Rittenmeyer, Patrick Peacock, and Justin Blakely, who decided to test their skills. But what began as a thrilling underwater adventure ended in absolute tragedy. Only one made it back to their meeting spot, but not without serious consequences. On Saturday, October 15, 2016, the three friends ventured into the Eagle's Nest sinkhole in Hernando County, Florida. Experienced cave divers Chris Rittenmeyer and Patrick Peacock, along with their friend Justin Blakely, aimed to explore the underwater cavern. The trio descended to a depth of 50 feet to reach the cave's entrance. Inside, they found a network of tunnels stretching over a mile long and reaching depths of more than 300 feet below the surface, teeming with diverse marine life. Despite safety concerns and local efforts to close the cave due to its dangerous nature, the divers continued. Officials had placed warning signs along the wooded path leading to the site, and another at the cave's underwater entrance featuring a grim reaper. The three friends, however, chose to ignore these warnings. The experienced divers were well prepared and fully aware of the risks. However, despite their efforts, their thrilling underwater adventure soon became a nightmare. The day before, Rittenmeyer and Peacock had visited the site to set up safety measures. They placed a series of backup diving cylinders known as bailout bottles along the tunnel walls of the Eagle Nest Cave. They were positioned at depths of 20 feet, 70 feet, and 120 feet, but no deeper. For those unaware, bailout bottles are filled with gas mixes adjusted for specific depths, typically containing varying concentrations of oxygen, nitrogen, and sometimes helium, depending on the depth. First, the divers swam to the right, heading down the upstream tunnel. The first stop was the Crevice Cave. From there, they entered their first chamber, Randy's room, where the walls were adorned with multicolored layers of clay formed over thousands of years. Next, they reached the largest room in Eagle's Nest, aptly named the Super Room, said to be the size of an aircraft hangar. But Peacock and Rittenmeyer craved a greater challenge. They turned towards the downstream tunnel, the opposite direction. Blakely, the most inexperienced diver, was to stay closer to the surface, mindful of Eagle's Nest's perilous reputation. They had agreed on a meeting point near the surface to regroup if things went awry and planned to meet there at 3 p.m. once they concluded their dive. And yet, their vast experience was about to be tested to the limit. Equipped with underwater scooters, backup scooters, and closed-circuit rebreathers, they were ready for an extended dive. Unlike open-circuit systems that release exhaled gas into the water, CCRs recycle exhaled gas, filtering out carbon dioxide and adjusting the gas mixture automatically to maintain a safe partial pressure of oxygen. This technology allowed for longer dive times and minimized sediment disturbance, ensuring better visibility underwater. As they ventured deeper into the downstream tunnel, they checked their diving computer for current depth and time. It was now 2 p.m., and they had just 1 hour before they needed to return to the meeting point and regroup with Blakely. The clock was ticking, and the depths of the Eagle's Nest held their fate in a delicate balance. With only an hour to spare, Rittenmeyer and Peacock planned to traverse John's Pocket, followed by Jim's room, the Half Moon room, and finally, at the very end of the tunnel, the Room of Dreams. But before they could continue, they had to squeeze through one of the narrowest and deepest parts of the entire cave system, a passageway called the Pit. Reaching a depth of 310 feet, the Pit is one of the deepest sections of any underwater cave in the United States. Its low visibility and myriad pathways added to the complexity. Rittenmeyer and Peacock arrived at the narrow passage 43 minutes after first entering the water. As they began to squeeze their way through, they were now at a depth of about 260 feet. One after the other, they entered the passage. However, 3 minutes later, unable to proceed further, they turned around and came back out. They spent 6 minutes floating outside the entrance, seemingly planning their next move. Then, determined, they re-entered the passage for a second time. This time, one of them successfully made it through while the other, either Rittenmeyer or Peacock, failed again. The diver who made it through turned around and headed back into the passage from the other direction, desperate to find his friend. At this point, time was running out, and the fate of both divers hung in the balance as they navigated the treacherous depths of the Pit. Suddenly, disaster struck. Peacock quickly started removing his diving equipment, while Rittenmeyer lost his headlight, plunging him into darkness. He failed to deploy any backup lights, leaving him blind in the underwater abyss. Peacock, now almost gearless, was left with just his mask, suit, and fins. At 61 minutes into their dive, one of the divers abandoned his functional rebreather and a full personal bailout bottle. Despite having remaining oxygen in his rebreather, his onboard dilutant bottle, used to dilute the oxygen in the rebreather's breathing loop, was empty. In desperation, he resorted to using his inflation bottle for emergency air. However, the bottle was meant for buoyancy control and was not suitable for breathing at that depth. With the rendezvous time closing in, Blakely started heading towards the meeting point. It was now 3 p.m., and after waiting several minutes, Peacock and Rittenmeyer still hadn't returned. Blakely swam up to the surface and then back down to check again, but there was still no sign of them. He repeated this process over and over again for several hours. By 6 p.m., 3 hours after they were supposed to meet, he decided to call for help. The Hernando County Sheriff's Office received a call from a distressed diver who'd lost contact with his 2 diving partners. Rescuers were shocked to learn where the call was coming from. Since 1981, Eagle's Nest had claimed the lives of at least 10 divers. Authorities traveled across miles of dirt roads through the wildlife management area, which could only be traversed with 4-wheel drive vehicles. As daylight faded quickly, they found Justin Blakely at the surface, along with his diving gear, anxiously awaiting help. Water. They began their search in the upstream tunnel, only to find the untouched staged bailout bodies. After hours of searching, they resurfaced at 3:30 a.m., having scoured the upstream tunnel and the Lockwood Tunnel, which runs perpendicular to the downstream tunnel, but found no signs of the missing divers. At 3:45 a.m., a second search team entered the water. This team consisted of Ted McCoy, an Olympic gold medalist diver, and A.J. Gonzalez, a firefighter and paramedic. They headed into the part of Eagle's Nest that the previous team hadn't explored yet, the downstream tunnel. Almost immediately, they made a grim discovery. Patrick Peacock and Chris Rittenmeyer's bodies were found floating near each other on the exit side of the pit. According to Florida law, the discovery had to be treated as a crime scene. McCoy and Gonzalez spent the next 45 minutes meticulously analyzing the scene and recording data before returning to the surface. As dawn broke, news crews surrounded Eagle's Nest, and rescue workers faced the daunting task of recovering the 2 bodies while fending off reporters desperate to uncover what had happened. Authorities didn't yet have an answer. They hoped that by recovering the bodies and examining the evidence, they could unravel the mystery. But what they would uncover would ultimately raise more questions. The recovery operation was dangerous and painstaking. The hours stretched on, filled with tension and sorrow. Finally, both Rittenmeyer and Peacock were extracted from the sinkhole. Pronounced dead at the scene, their bodies were transported to the Hernando County Coroner's Office. As medical examiners worked to determine the cause of death, rescue divers returned to the sinkhole to gather evidence. Their primary focus was on locating the missing gear, which could provide crucial insights into what went wrong. With each descent into the pit, rescue divers faced the same peril that claimed Patrick Peacock and Chris Rittenmeyer. Despite the risks, they managed to retrieve all of the equipment discarded by the 2 divers, scattered across the pit floor. Experts like John Burnett and Ted McCoy eagerly inspected the gear, ready to identify any potential issues. Yet, after a meticulous examination, not a single piece of faulty equipment was found. Everything was in proper working order at the time of Peacock and Rittenmeyer's deaths. Remarkably, the expert consensus even suggested that the pair had been exceptionally well prepared for Eagle's Nest. In search of answers, they reached out to scuba instructor Ken Sallet, who analyzed the data from the dive computer. He provided a detailed account of Peacock and Rittenmeyer's movements inside the cave. Yet even this comprehensive overview failed to yield any substantial explanation. Similarly, the Hernando County Coroner's Office couldn't uncover much. Both Rittenmeyer and Peacock were determined to have drowned, yet medical examinations failed to reveal any clues regarding the how or why of their deaths. The story garnered considerable attention in the local press and sparked widespread discussion on diving forums. Enthusiasts from around the globe shared their theories on how 2 highly experienced divers, equipped with fully functional gear and taking all necessary precautions, could still have ended up dead at the bottom of Eagle's Nest. The debate may persist for years. In their 2016 accident records, the National Speleological Society officially listed the cause as unknown. Chairman Joe Citelli concluded the report with the statement, "Sometimes bad things happen to good people for no apparent reason." So what do you think was the cause? Fear, paranoia, Cthulhu? Shout off in the comments down below. Now, if you thought that story was sad, then let's dive into our next one. Father that loses a loved one. On a Christmas morning in 2014, Darren Spivey, a 35-year-old roofer from Brooksville, set out for a dive at Eagle's Nest with his 15-year-old son, Dylan Sanchez. It was a special occasion as they had received new dive equipment as presents and were eager to try it out. Darren had a lifelong passion for diving, starting from his childhood days when he would gather friends for weekend swims. While he was a certified diver capable of depths of up to 130 feet with regular air tanks, cave diving required specialized training and equipment, which he hadn't pursued despite encouragement from experienced divers like Robert Brooks. 6 months prior, Darren had met Robert Brooks, who emphasized the importance of cave certification. Despite loaning him equipment and urging him to take a course, Darren had postponed it. His son, Dylan, also shared his father's enthusiasm for diving and was preparing diligently for his certification, immersed in dive manuals and drills set by his father. According to family members, Darren and Dylan had dived at Eagle's Nest several times before and were well aware of its dangers. Safety was always their top priority, emphasized by Darren's fiancée, Holly King, who described him as deeply devoted to his family and willing to take every precaution for their safety. Tragically, despite their experience and careful preparations, the Christmas dive would end in heartbreak. The serene beauty of Eagle's Nest, a place that they loved and respected, became the backdrop to a devastating loss that left their loved ones grappling with grief and unanswered questions. It all began as a normal day. Darren and Dylan left home at 7 a.m. with excitement to test their new diving equipment at Beaufort Springs. Disappointed to find it flooded, they decided to drive down to Eagle's Nest sinkhole instead. Arriving at around 11 a.m., they parked near a wooden dock adorned with warning signs, marking the treacherous dive ahead. Despite the warnings, Darren and his son suited up in scuba gear and walked across the dock to the water's edge. They plunged in, swimming leisurely until they reached the entrance room of Eagle's Nest, known as the Ballroom, a vast cavern plunging to depths of about 200 feet. Darren assured Robert Brooks, his mentor, that they would remain in the ballroom rather than venture into the narrower tunnels beyond. Robert cautioned that even the ballroom, with its dark corners and deceptive caves below, posed risks to those without proper cave diving training. Past the warning signs, Darren and Dylan moved beyond the entrance, following a narrow, descending tunnel that stretched deep into the earth. Typically, divers would use a guideline to navigate this narrow passage, crucial in the murky waters where sunlight quickly vanishes. After entering the main ballroom, Darren and Dylan continued their dive without incident initially. However, as they ventured deeper into the cavern, the situation took a turn for the worse. Aware that their oxygen supply wouldn't last long at such depths, they knew they would need about an hour to safely decompress during their ascent, preventing decompression sickness by slowly rising to the surface to avoid air bubbles forming in their blood. Reflecting on the tragedy later, Robert Brooks lamented Darren's decision to push beyond his training, a warning he had once voiced. "One day, they'll call me to come get you," he had forewarned. Despite Darren's meticulous preparation of their gear, their inexperience in Eagle's Nest proved to be their undoing. They were doomed from the start, Brooks mournfully acknowledged. As their dive gauges ominously dropped to 230 feet, signs of trouble became evident. Without the proper gas mixture for deep dives, they succumbed to nitrogen narcosis, a disorienting condition exacerbated by the high-pressure environment. It clouded their judgment, making it difficult to accurately gauge time and air consumption. Dylan, first to exhaust his air supply, signaled his dwindling gauge to his father amidst the dim, murky depths. In a desperate act of paternal love, Darren shared his regulator, sacrificing his own dwindling supply to save his son. But as their air ran out, panic set in. Lost without the guideline, they struggled to find their way back to safety. Weakened by oxygen deprivation, Darren lost consciousness, silently sinking to the cave floor. Dylan, taking his final, fleeting breath, attempted a desperate ascent, propelled by his water wings. In the chaos, the guideline slipped from their grasp, leaving Dylan disoriented and unable to find the exit in the dark labyrinth. As hours passed without any word from Darren or Dylan, Holly, Darren's fiancée, grew increasingly worried. With the sun setting, she decided to drive to Eagle's Nest herself to search for them. Darren had texted her just before they entered the water, informing her of their dive location. Upon arriving, Holly found Darren's car near the dock, but no sign of them. Fearing the worst, she made the difficult decision to call the authorities for help. Around 7:30 p.m., with growing concern and no contact from Darren and Dylan, Holly reached out to the sheriff's office. Meanwhile, upon learning of the missing divers, Brooks mobilized 2 certified cave divers to aid in the search. Law enforcement responded swiftly, deploying recovery divers trained specifically for such emergencies into Eagle's Nest, prepared for the possibility that Darren and Dylan had encountered difficulties. Following the guideline into the ballroom through the narrow passage, the divers advanced cautiously, their flashlights probing the darkness. They halted just outside the passage, scanning the ceiling where divers often become trapped near the entrance to other underwater caves. Between 9 p.m. and 10 p.m., at a depth of 67 feet, one of the divers made a grim discovery: Dylan's lifeless body floating against the ceiling of the ballroom. Further into the cavern, at a depth of 127 feet, Darren's body was found in a large mound on the ballroom floor. Brooks later revealed that their dive computers and air gauges indicated both had descended to 233 feet and had depleted their air supply. Tragically, father and son succumbed to the depths of Eagle's Nest on Christmas Day. Their deaths were ruled accidental drowning by authorities. And finally, on September 11, 2005, Judy Bedard and her partner, Rudy Banks, embarked on an exhilarating journey into the depths of Eagle's Nest Sinkhole's cave system. Judy, a 48-year-old seasoned cave diver and registered nurse at Tampa General Hospital, was no stranger to underwater exploration. Her dive adventures with friends in the past had prepared her well for such expeditions. The day unfolded as they entered the water at 4:30 p.m., eager to explore the mysterious depths beneath. With a deliberate descent, they immersed themselves into the underwater labyrinth. Judy, equipped with initially an oxygen-only tank for the shallow depths, transitioned smoothly to nitrox at 30 feet. Nitrox, a blend of oxygen and nitrogen, was essential for optimizing gas mixtures at varying depths, ensuring safety and efficiency. As they delved deeper, reaching 130 feet, the dive took an unexpected turn. Technical glitches plagued Judy's equipment, prompting a swift switch to her primary trimix tank. Trimix, a specialized mixture of oxygen, nitrogen, and helium, was crucial for deeper dives, mitigating the risks associated with high-pressure environments. Despite the challenges, Judy and Rudy pressed on, navigating the intricate passageways with the skill and determination of seasoned divers. Each turn brought new wonders and challenges, testing their expertise and equipment to the limit. Yet, the depths held unforeseen obstacles. Technical difficulties persisted, complicating their descent further. Judy's quick decision to switch to trimix underscored her preparedness and adaptability in the face of adversity, traits that defined her as a diver. Unfortunately, the primary tank they relied on didn't have the correct mix of gases necessary for the depths they were navigating. Rudy noticed the issue, and Judy swiftly switched back to her nitrox tank. However, the consequences of the incorrect gas mixture had already taken their toll. With compromised gas mixes, they began their ascent towards the surface. In cave diving, ascent must be gradual to prevent decompression sickness, commonly known as the bends. Rapid ascents can also lead to potentially fatal conditions like gas embolism, where bubbles or clots obstruct blood circulation. Time became their enemy as they needed to manage a slow and controlled decompression. Due to the gas mix-up in her primary tank, Judy found herself breathing in excess of helium and insufficient oxygen, exacerbating their already precarious situation. As they ascended to 100 feet, Judy's condition worsened. The incorrect gas mixture had left her breathing excessive helium and nearly devoid of oxygen. By the time they reached the 60-foot mark from the surface, Judy lost consciousness. Rudy faced a dire dilemma. With Judy in critical condition and still a significant distance from safety, he had to choose between two grim options. A rapid ascent risked worsening Judy's already severe condition, potentially leading to dangerous decompression sickness. On the other hand, a slow ascent meant that Judy would continue to suffer from oxygen deprivation, likely resulting in her death within the cave. Amidst the uncertainty, Rudy opted for the faster ascent, clinging to the hope that managing the decompression sickness would give Judy a chance, however slim, of survival outside of the cave's depths. Rudy quickly ascended with Judy to the surface, where he desperately needed help to resuscitate her. Greg Stanton, a former diving safety officer at Florida State University, and his friend James Gary, a member of the University of South Florida's Diving Control Board, responded swiftly after concluding their dives. Greg lamented the challenges that arose from the rapid ascent, leading to serious injuries, including arterial gas embolisms for Judy. Upon surfacing, Judy was unresponsive, her eyes open with blood and foam emanating from her mouth. James halted Dan Pelland, a Spring Hill resident arriving at Eagle's Nest for photography, and used his phone to call 911. Together with Pelland, James assisted Rudy in performing CPR urgently needed to revive Judy, whose heart responded 15 to 20 minutes into the procedure. Although her breathing was restored, Judy remained unconscious and in dire need of immediate medical attention, which was hindered by the remote and challenging location of Eagle's Nest sinkhole. Due to inadequate supplies and transportation difficulties, the medical team had to improvise, transporting Judy in a sport utility vehicle without an IV drip to meet a waiting ambulance and helicopter support at a forest clearing nearby. Stephen Farmer, a fish and wildlife investigator, later corroborated Greg and James' assessments, attributing Judy's severe injuries to poorly mixed trimix tanks, improper gas analysis, and a closed isolation valve between tanks that Judy overlooked checking before diving. Transported to Tampa General Hospital for extensive rehabilitation, Judy didn't regain full consciousness until November, 2 months after the incident. Recounting her ordeal, Judy recalled waking up unable to move, her legs weakened and fitted with a tracheotomy tube. She battled cardiac arrests, respiratory issues, organ complications, cognitive decline, and post-traumatic amnesia during her hospitalization. Despite the severe trauma, Judy defied expectations, undergoing months of intense therapy. Initially reliant on assistance for basic movements and experiencing breathlessness after minimal exertion, she made remarkable progress. Within 5 weeks, Judy triumphantly walked over 300 feet, earning praise from medical professionals who called her recovery miraculous. Returning to work at Tampa General in June 2007, initially in the operating room before transitioning to medical records, Judy prioritized diving and work-life balance. Overcoming initial anxieties, she resumed exploring underwater caves, including Peacock Springs in North Florida, embodying a spirit of adventure and determination that defined her journey back to health and her beloved underwater pursuits. El Dudu Cave System. El Dudu, located approximately 15 minutes east of Cabrera, is easily identified by a sign on the right side of the road that reads Dudu Lake. Cabrera is a big island in Spain, part of the Balearic Islands, found in the Mediterranean Sea near the southern side of Mallorca. It's also a national park, and the highest spot is Na Picamosques at 172 meters. It's the biggest island in a group that includes other islands like Estelas de Fora, Neo Redonia, Conilera, and Na Foradada, going from south to north. Now, El Dudu offers straightforward access with cement stairs leading down to the water's edge. It's a hot spot for both tourists and locals, drawing people from all around to enjoy activities like jumping into the water, swimming, and having a good time. The surface of the water provides an easy swim to the far left side, where a substantial tunnel begins, marking the start of the cavern line. This tunnel extends about 328 feet, featuring a spacious air dome 164 feet in. On the right side, there's a section with breakdown slabs and a warning sign. Here, you can connect to the cavern line at the yellow arrow, navigate through the restriction, and reach the main line of the cave, positioned right within the halocline. The initial section of the cave boasts a sizable and towering main tunnel adorned with numerous dark, tannic-stained decorations. One of the columns reaches an impressive height of over 49 feet, creating a stunning underwater landscape. The maximum depth in this area is 65 feet. As you progress through the tunnel, you'll encounter a steep slope at the end, ascending to about 9 feet. Here, a T-junction appears to the right as an air pocket with good air but no external access, while to the left, the cave continues its mysterious journey. Following the main line further, the cave's height decreases and you navigate through a series of peculiar dark stalactites before the tunnel widens once again. The subsequent part of the dive is characterized by a lack of decorations and generally shallower depths, averaging only 6 to 7 meters. After approximately 45 minutes of swimming, you reach the end of the line, ascending to another entrance known as Cueva de Lily. This area often hosts bats, snakes, and typical cave critters like whip scorpions and tarantulas. Although it's possible to exit through Cueva de Lily, it can be a bit cumbersome. On the return journey, you have the option to swim around the sinkhole to the left and explore the cavern zone. This area comprises 2 additional tunnels leading to the third entrance called Pozo de los Caballos, before turning back toward the stairs. The cavern zone offers a grandiose experience with impressive shellfish-encrusted stalactites and unique watercolors, making it well worth a visit. This is where the 2 Carloses thought it would be best for them to do their exploration. Little did they know that this cave would be their demise. Carlos Barbieri, aged 57, and Carlos Basso, 44, were all set for an adventurous cave diving escapade in the underwater cave system of El Dudu Lagoon. Now, these guys were known for going big in high-risk cave dives worldwide, but here's the twist: they didn't have the official cave diving certifications. So an Italian diving instructor, Ed Sorensen, who ended up working on the rescue mission, warned Basso about entering the cave. He was concerned about Basso and told him to get some proper cave diving training. Basso, though, with a touch of overconfidence, waved it off, saying, "There's nothing new you can teach me. I know it all already." Wow. Ed Sorensen. Speaking of Ed Sorensen, he's a distinguished technical cave diver renowned for his vast experience in rescuing and recovering divers lost or trapped in underwater caves. His operations often take place in challenging environments with zero visibility, requiring high adaptive thinking and situational awareness. One unique technique Ed employs is temporarily ceasing to breathe. This intentional action reduces noise, enhancing his ability to hear faint sounds, crucial for locating distressed divers. This technique proved notably effective in a rescue operation involving 2 students abandoned by their instructor. By silencing his breathing, Ed could better detect and locate the stranded individuals by listening to their screams in the cave. In a notable incident in 2012, Jeff Bauer, an IUCR diver, faced extreme challenges during a body recovery mission near a cave system in Tallahassee. Despite Bauer's expertise, he recognized the difficulty of the task in a particularly narrow section of the cave and recommended Ed Sorensen for the mission. Upon notification, Sorensen and his team swiftly prepared their equipment and reached the dive site in less than 10 minutes. The recovery operation was laborious and prolonged, involving 7 divers over 8 hours. Sorensen navigated through the narrow passages within the cave system, and the complexity escalated when he had to remove his diving gear to access a small opening. The body, in a state of rigor mortis, was wedged in a manner that temporarily trapped Sorensen during retrieval. With meticulous manipulation of the deceased's limbs, he successfully pushed the body back out through the constricted space. In his own words, "What did I just do? Now there's zero chance of getting him out." Ed had to carefully maneuver to complete the challenging retrieval. When asked about how he deals with the psychological demands of such challenging tasks, Ed Sorensen adopts a practical approach. He acknowledges that, though it might seem emotionally detached, focusing solely on the technical aspects of the job enables him to perform effectively under high stress and emotionally charged circumstances. In one instance, Ed received a video of a trapped individual. His initial assessment centered on the possibility of a rescue, considering the intricate nature of the cave's restrictions. Recognizing the urgency, Ed utilized a special harness he had designed in 2012 for a similar tight recovery mission. This harness featured a loop configuration around the neck and armpits, ensuring uniform force distribution across the entire torso. This design element was critical to prevent the risk of body parts getting ripped off during retrieval, especially when submerged in warm water for an extended period. Now that we have a strong understanding of Ed's background, let's switch back to our story. So, despite the Carloses lacking all the necessary gear for such a tricky dive, these daredevils still plunged into the challenging caves of El Dudu Lagoon. An Italian diver who knew them remarked, "The danger's not real to these divers, it's like they're playing a game of underwater roulette." He pointed out the main reason for their risky behavior. First, there's pure ignorance. Because they're so beyond their training, they don't even realize the dangers. Second, it's all about ego. The boastful belief that they can tackle something super dangerous and come out unscathed. You know, the classic, "I dived in an underwater cave and here I am" kind of an attitude. But here's the kicker. When untrained divers venture into such hazardous spots, it's like playing a Russian roulette, and sooner or later, luck runs out. The divers stress that people with this mindset not only risk their own safety, but also become a big headache for others. Their recklessness can lead to complicated and dangerous missions for professional divers who have to step in for rescues and body recoveries. The dive. On the fresh morning of February 9th, 2019, precisely at 11:45 a.m., the Carloses embarked on an underwater adventure in the El Dudu sinkhole. Their mission? To uncover a new and unexplored secret passage in the connecting cave system. As they entered the cave, a gateway to the daunting system awaited them. After navigating through some narrow passageways and right past a highly conspicuous warning sign, the cave system began to open up. A huge tunnel full of pillars, stalagmites, and stalactites winds even further and further into the bowels of the earth. Navigating through an extensive tunnel, they encountered a unique chamber with a rare natural feature, an air pocket. This underwater sanctuary provided a brief yet crucial moment for them to pop their heads above the water, breathe fresh air, and prepare for the journey ahead. However, as they pressed on, the once wide passages transformed into increasingly narrow and winding paths. Each turn and squeeze through tight passages posed a calculated risk, with thoughts of the walls potentially cutting or pulling out their air hoses connected to their dive tanks. Reaching a critical point near the terminal section of the cave, they faced a deceptive ascent towards an alternate exit called Cueva de Lily. This exit, a misleading path, diverged from their initial route and guided them towards a different and potentially more treacherous cave system. Their situation intensified dramatically. Their air supplies, the lifeline in this underwater cave, were rapidly dwindling, bringing them closer to a critical threshold. In a harrowing development, one diver became entangled in the guideline, the thread that would lead them back out of the cave. The severance of this line plunged them into disorientation, erasing their path to escape. To make matters worse, they had inadvertently followed a false dive line, a remnant from previous explorers that could lead them further astray into another cave system. By late afternoon on the same day, the Carloses had not returned from their dive. A concerned friend alerted authorities, triggering an alarm for rescue teams to intervene. The search begins. The search team, led by Philip Lehman and Angel Compress, alongside local authorities from Cabrera, the town nearest to El Dudu Lagoon, organized a systematic approach to locate the missing divers. Facing the uncertainty of their location within the extensive cave system, Philip and Angel entered the water. Upon diving, they immediately encountered a significant amount of stirred-up silt, a fine particulate matter that severely reduces visibility underwater. This condition transformed the clear water into an opaque environment, hindering navigation and search efforts. The presence of excessive silt not only impeded their search, but also indicated recent activity and potential distress, suggesting that the missing divers might have passed through the area, possibly facing difficulties. Philip and Angel's challenge was navigating through compromised visibility while methodically searching the labyrinth of passages for the divers. Their strategy led them to a constricted passageway where they made a critical discovery: a severed guideline. Guidelines in cave diving are crucial for navigation and safety, and the broken guideline indicated a significant mishap. Relying on the silt to indicate the diver's path proved problematic, but it guided them to an essential clue. The poor visibility necessitated a temporary suspension of the search efforts, allowing the team to reassess the situation, plan a safer approach, and ensure the safety of the rescue team in the treacherous conditions of the El Dudu cave system. Despite rigorous efforts, the divers could not locate either of the missing individuals. The situation took a grim turn when they discovered the body of 57-year-old Carlos Barbieri in a narrow side passage of the cave, tightly wedged in a space that was difficult to access. The recovery of his body became impossible due to the challenging conditions. In the following week, the search made no significant progress in finding the other Carlos. The complexity and scale of the situation led to the decision to seek additional expertise, calling in the experts. In response to the challenging situation, Mike Young and internationally renowned rescue diver Ed Sorensen were summoned to the Dominican Republic. However, their heroic arrival faced an unexpected setback. Upon reaching the border, local authorities informed them that they were not permitted to enter the country. This news came while Carlos Barbieri's body remained lodged in a side passage and Carlos Basso remained missing. In a later report by the National Speleological Society, the reason for this refusal was somewhat strange. The government was not only aware of the diving accident, but also knew about the ongoing rescue mission that had been in progress for well over a week. They hesitated to allow two American rescue divers, Ed Sorensen and Mike Young, assuming that if it had taken this long, the operation must have been too dangerous. After hasty negotiations and possibly showcasing Ed Sorensen's track record, they were eventually granted permission to enter the Dominican Republic. However, there was a catch. They only had 8 days to recover the bodies. After this period, the authorities would call off the search for good. Recalling the story later, Sorensen described how he brought special harnesses designed for extracting bodies. These harnesses were created to wrap around various points in the body because, after being trapped and submerged for an extended period, the bodies might not come out intact. The urgency and complexity of the situation demanded swift and meticulous action from the experienced rescue divers. Rescue efforts. Navigating through the silt and intricate passages of the cave system, Ed Sorensen detailed how he explored the cave during the recovery mission. With one hand on his guideline and the other extended in front of him, he felt around for objects that weren't made of sand, water, or rock. In this way, he stumbled upon the still trapped body of Carlos Barbieri, physically bumping into him. Unable to extract the body alone, Sorensen called for the local crew to bring down milk crates filled with weights. These weights were crucial in pulling the body down just enough to maneuver it out from under the section of the passage where it was stuck. After approximately 4 hours of grueling work, the deceased Barbieri was successfully recovered. However, the whereabouts of the younger Carlos Basso's body remained unknown. The day after the exhausting recovery of Carlos Barbieri, Ed Sorensen and Mike Young returned to the cave. They continued their search in the same area, venturing deeper into the furthest depths of El Dudu. Sorensen reached a wall at the very back of the passageway before discovering the body of Carlos Basso, located in a crevice. To reach him, Sorensen had to let go of the guideline he held onto, with Mike Young taking control of the guideline while working with one hand to recover Basso's body. In contrast to the first recovery, Sorensen was able to extract Basso's body without additional help. However, due to the extreme depths at which the body was found, the entire recovery process took approximately 4 hours. Well, among all of these incidents, which one did you find more disturbing? Or at any chance, if you found yourself in any of these situations, which one do you think you would survive? Share your thoughts in the comments section below, and don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel for more videos. We'll see you in the next one.